still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
All right. Good evening, folks. Sorry for the delay, but welcome to Wednesday Night Live. I'm your host, Kirk Pendergrass, and my co-host over there, Christopher Hallett, CEO of eClaws.
Good evening,
Welcome
everybody.
aboard.
Hope everybody is on their right schedule, considering we're behind. Kirk was taking a nap, and my head still hurts. So you see, no shiner though. Yeah, that's the good news. But anyway, we'll work our way through that.
Those late nights and early mornings and long days.
Only on the ones that end in Y.
Only on those.
So, yeah, well, you know, it's just one of those things. It is what it is. So we're going to wing it.
Yes.
Hope everybody's having a nice week. It's the kind of the nature of the beast around here. So we're going to, I'm going to talk a little bit about, you know, political arguments and, you know, why everything appears to be sort of circular, right? Because in essence, that's exactly what it is right now. This is literally a circular argument. So I'll go ahead and get you guys, get this thing started.
Chocolate popcorn going here.
There you go, old chocolate popcorn. So knowing and understanding that what we're dealing with actually kind of looks a lot like this, right? So anybody's ever seen this movie knows exactly what I'm talking about. So, you know, trying to make sense of the way a computer thinks and, you know, how all this crap actually works is, well, again, you got to remember it's only as smart as the person that programmed it. So that said, you know, we're going to go in and I'm going to, you know, remember one of the things that I try to help you guys do is break this thing down to its most bare bones elements, right? My choice was to go after, and I targeted one word that actually was in law versus what the other side was claiming, right? The difference between an entitlement versus an emolument. So we know that this is its bare definition. Like everybody else who has a brain, I went to a dictionary and I picked it up, and this is what I found. Okay, well, okay, I'll stipulate to that because that word appears in my oath of office. So I know what they mean in the private sector, okay, because I know what doing business looks like. Okay, so within the jurisdiction of any company I was working for, that's within the triangle. Okay, its contribution to society is very monitored very closely, market margin and capital. You know, that's why I always joke about it. You know, you want to know about what I do, go watch the New York Stock Exchange. You know, talk about one of my favorite jokes, you know. So with the understanding that when I do work for the government in any capacity, those things are usually subsidized. And there are many forms of subsidies. There are tax breaks. You know, when we exchange our goods or services for, you know, products or whatever, those bills are paid in the form of what's called a subsidy. Again, you know, this is all stuff that to me was elementary, my dear Watson, right? So here's the page out of the book. And I look in there and I'm like, well, Yeah. So since the 15th century, nobody's touched it. It's kind of been there until like what? Oh, 91? Oh. So that means somebody is trying to change the meaning of the word. One of the ways to do that is to put modifiers in either in front of it or behind it, right? Foreign emoluments clause, for example, which by the way still remains undefined. So it's like, oh, I mean, this is one of them there political arguments. I know what these look like. I participated in one or two of these in my career. So we have to go through and we figure out, here's the etymology of the word, the entire history of the word, in addition to its, base elements, advantage, profit, and gain as articulated in the dictionary. So again, have to do your research and development. This is the research part, right? So, because what are the elements of practice? You have to know a knowledge of law, a knowledge of history, and of course, a knowledge of government, how it works. Okay. So again, all of these things are, I'm stipulating to a lot here in case you're not, for those who haven't, been with us very long. I'm saying, yeah, these are things that are acceptable. I'll buy that, right? So we go and we talked about this on the Monday night show. What are some of the things that give a corporation its character, right? What are some of those principles on which it does business? Okay. Well, for example, to know a thing and to be bound to know it are regarded in law as equivalent. Well, if I'm going to be working with hazardous materials like things like battery acid, I would certainly be expected to be bound to know where to go find anything related to that subject matter, right? So it's just sort of a basic kind of get everybody caught back up as to where these legal maxims come from and how they're applied every day in our everyday lives, whether we even realize it or not. They're there. So I assemble a few of those and I say, this is part of my character as my corporation, since we're going to talk about this word. Okay. And we already know that our system of government is capitalism. We've known that like for, ever. So I start to say, okay, I need to ask a question here, because before I present my grievance, I still have to know beyond the dictionary definition, what would this word mean in the context of law? And so I apply this legal principle to it, right? To my question. In order to rightly comprehend a thing, it is first necessary to inquire into the names. For right knowledge of things depends on their names. So, I prepare this monstrosity using my fiduciary duty. Well, remember, there's my oath of office. I just talked about that. And that word emoluments is right in here. Hey, wait a minute. Let's see. It might zoom it in. Yep. There it is. Right there. Right. It's in my oath of office. That's got my name on it. Uh-oh. Okay. Well, I know what a fiduciary is. I had to take a test on that, right? So that means I'm duty bound here, right? So here's how I asked the question. We've already been over how I did that. So kind of like I said, to kind of bring you guys who haven't been with us all this time, kind of bring you up to speed here. This is what everything that went into creating the parliamentary inquiry, because I've been asked that question more than once. So I kind of hope that gives you guys the origins of how I actually decided to do this. And of course, Bill Barr, he in his best Yoda in form, he thought, hey, that's actually a pretty good question, right? Well, what do we know about politics and how these things work? Well, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So, his answer of stipends, I was expecting subsidies, by the way. So Now, guess what? We now have a conflict here, right? We have two interpretations of the same word, right? My interpretation is this is what I always knew, and now we have this other interpretation of the word. Could that potentially lead to one of the reasons why I have a grievance, right? Well, so I take and I do what I do, run through the process, right? Well, Richard Cranium, I have an idea, right? Here's all the emoluments of my corporation, and here's how my corporation does business, right? We have a meeting or a quorum, right? Go through all of these things, and we've talked about this: research and development, marketing, accounting, HR, shipping, payroll, depending on the subject matter. And we've already decided the jurisdiction, so we don't even need to have that conversation, by the way. So yeah, I did the work for you on this one, guys. I did the heavy lifting, right? So next thing you know, you got a bunch of these jackwagons and numbnutses and other associated SMU, right? And they start off with their typical invasion of the body snatchers mentality, right? That's sovereign citizen, so this is the part that I laugh at because it really is hilarious. I don't know any other way to put it. I mean, other than, do you know any other way to put it, Kirk? This is the best way I can explain that.
Sovereign citizen.
Right. That's what they look like.
That's an oxymoron,
right? I mean, after watching
the people are sovereign because our sovereignty comes from God,
right? So,
and when you do the quid pro quo, that contract of employment or office, you give up your sovereignty to serve the people, and you're bound by oath or affirmation to support the Constitution.
Right.
Support it, like hold it up, make sure that, like kind of like in color guard and that kind of stuff. You don't ever let the flag touch the ground, right?
Right. That would be a duty of performance, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Specific duties to perform.
There it is right there. So, we're kind of on the same page here, right? Are you going after the bar, bro? Just kidding. So, after watching the video from, what was it, last week, and, we played it a couple of times, that's why when I stumbled across this image, I'm like, I got to put that in there because that's exactly what that was. The more you tried to explain to that poor woman what the hell domestic violence was, and the more circular her arguments became, you see the correlation here, so this is what I see when somebody starts with that malarkey, that crap, right? So
yep,
of course my reaction is SMU. Right.
Yep.
I'm just allergic to bullshit. I'm sorry. I really am. And it's in the meantime, through this whole thing, somebody in the background walked up behind somebody and smacked him in the back of the freaking head. Said, dude, what the hell are you talking about? Who is this guy? Who is this guy? Where's standing? What does he have? Oh, that's this guy right here. And yeah, he followed due process of law, the law of creation, right? We've talked about that. So, yes, he is your competition. Why? Because in our capitalist society, we have competition. It's a wonderful thing, right? So,
how can they be competition when they never entered the race?
Oh, see what I'm saying? Nah,
I mean, come
there
on.
You go. That's what I said. It's like,
That membership card does not resemble this.
Right. One of these things just doesn't belong here.
But the funny thing is they go get one of these for their law firm.
Right.
So it's like, what's the deal there?
Yeah. Guys, what are you doing? Right.
Yeah.
So, of course, me being me, I kind of respond to that the most eloquent way that I can. So, which of course, knowing that the arrogance and the just mere brutality of the people that have pulled this crap, this is really their mentality. So I said, okay, you want to play, odious claims and shit made, I'll play that with you. The force is strong with this one,
pong?
right? Yes, the force is strong with this one. So, and I actually have a weed up my ass and a legitimate gripe, right? So, this is as I'm working on preparing my remonstrance, right? And of course, others that I've already, sent in since and like that. So here's their response. Uh-oh. Damn.
Damn.
Meanwhile, back in reality here, back at the ranch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guys, these guys are starting to feel pretty backed into a corner by now, right? This monopoly, right? This crap, this shit made up.
Uh-huh.
So, I've literally got them surrounded on three sides, and then of course the only thing over here is probably what, water. So hope you motherfuckers know how to swim. Just saying.
That shit is deep.
Right. So here's really the with the bar in the middle, that's the reason the line is red. But looking at kind of the difference between the mentalities, right, over the years since, about the last, 4 or 5 decades, okay, we've had this mentality of the monarchy of the bar, that has become the Democrats, and it behaves a certain way, right? It going back to the creation of the KKK and all of those, civil unrest groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
that have come along. So, this is the political shit show, I mean, that has been, that they've been trying to program everybody with. So you can say, okay, well, yeah, we have two things to talk about. So now we have something to argue about. We're not really going to do anything, but we're just going to, you just go watch the pigskin on Monday Night Football, and pay attention just to whoever's throwing the ball around, and don't pay attention to us, right? So this is the bare elements of what DC would have you believe would be a political argument, right? So I, of course, walk in and I realize, this being, hey, yeah, I know what your political strategy is, because I know I took political science. I completely, and of course, mathematics and calculus and geometry and yada, yada, yada. So I've already figured out how they've divided 3 evenly using a bar, right? There it is right there. It's right there in black and white. Well, black, white, red, and blue. So in yellow.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I go in and I start to realize the Democrats ain't Democrats anymore. We got a problem here, because the Republicans are still the Republicans, right? The problem with it is they've been intimidated by this, what's now referred to as the hard left Democrats, which I'll show you in just a second. So what we were led to believe before, which was the bar and, yada, 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 it is, when I walked in and started to see the strife between what's going on in the liberal left right now, the Democratic Party, here's actually what's going on. Okay. The Democrats are no longer the Democrats. The Democrats are split. They've got this new socialist faction, right, where they're entitled to everything. Stop me if you've never heard any of this, right? Then you have your staunch Democrats, the ones that they're technically on the right. And, they're starting to now know and understand and comprehend what the hell has actually been going on right? Because there's let's just say it's those truths that we talk about that are self-evident, and just leave it at that, right? So here's actually what's going on right now. This is actually what Washington, D.C. actually looks like in its actual representation. Okay. It's no longer just Republicans and Democrats. You've got these socialists in there. Okay. So, but they're pretending to be Democrats. You know, there's wannabe Democrats or whatever the hell they are. So when the Democrats were building the infrastructure, when they were, advocating for unions and all that stuff during the industrial era, the infrastructure that was actually being built was the thing that created this socialist mechanism, right? Much in the same way they created the KKK and all those other bullshit groups, right? So in the meantime, back at the ranch here, that's, those of us that know what a republic is and how to use it, working in our market margin and capital every day, right? In these corporations following due process of law out of the book, basically, we're paying for all of this crap. These other two, factions over here. I don't know what the hell else to call them. They're friggin' factions. So now that we know what Washington, D.C. actually looks like, there's your true representation of the political structure that we're looking at in the here and the now. So, again, to know a thing and to rightly know a thing, you have to inquire into the names. So the right knowledge of things depends on their names. Well, what do we know about emoluments? It's got three components to it: advantage, profit, and gain. Well, you've got these actors here. Remember this bar trying to control everything. The problem with it is you've got now two factions struggling over the same bar, right? So there's, this is where we go in and we go, okay, yeah, I'm going to need something a little bit stronger than T to deal with this one, right? So anyway, I digress. So I say, shall we play a game? So what's the game? That's the Remonstrance, by the way. But it's, of course, it's all circular and it's all, shit made up and all of that. So here's what that actually looks like. Bullshit made up political jeopardy, right? It kind of looks a lot like a tic-tac-toe board. And so we have the socialists, the Democrats, and the Republicans, and we have the bare elements of public sector emoluments and the elements of private sector emoluments, all within this fancy little board. So this is the game we're playing, political jeopardy, right? So this is kind of where we're at right now. And having watched this play out more times, in in history than I care to even articulate with all the research that I've done, here's what it actually looks like. It's literally political tic-tac-toe, right? I mean, it is what it is. So we've got three factions, two arguments, and that's X's and O's or ones and zeros if you're a computer programmer. So here's where we are. We're watching all this crap go on, right? Watching the war play out in the war room. That's your turn on your television every night and watch the fake news. So there's the fake news playing out on the screen right now for you. Doom and gloom. Watch out. Be careful. Yada, yada, yada. Let's look at some of those campaigns. I can't read them on this one. I'll have to pull up that slide in just a bit. But so, this is now where, I'm sitting here having done this more times. That's why I say it's, I've already come to the conclusion of, the only winning move is not to play. So, but knowing and understanding that people still seem to think that you can win this argument, it ain't going to happen. So literally what we're fighting over now is what process we're following, right? That's the political tic-tac-toe, right? That's it right there. So they know they can't win on the merits. They can't win on strategy. They can't win. The courts shut them down in more ways and in more flavors than we can shake a stick at. So, what becomes reality is you've heard us talk about this before. Who's on the cleanup team and who's on the cover-up team? That's going to be really what's going to be decided at the end of the day. So, this is basically kind of the short version of political tic-tac-toe and where we are with impeachment, because no matter what happens, no matter what they say, no matter what they do, we already know they're not following due process of law, at least according to the principles in the book. And I'll just pull those back up here real quick, because here's what those principles are. We've shown those how many times. So if they can't even create rules that are in compliance with these 10 principles, we're not even talking about maxims of law yet. I mean, let's just stick to the top 10 here, right? David Letterman's top 10 list. So if you can't stick to the top 10, nothing is going to be valid, period. End of discussion. For example, the question must be decided by taking a vote. What did Pelosi just come out and say? Oh, we're not taking a vote. Well, if you, again, if you're going to do everything you can to keep everybody out of having the opportunity to debate the question of impeachment, by the way, you're going to deny, or at least attempt to deny, the due process of, has to be taken a vote. Somebody has to step up and say yay or nay, right? So, yeah, any decision, it's not even going to be valid. This is why I say this is political tic-tac-toe. This is a cat's game that you're watching. There ain't going to be no winners in this. So, I hope that when that reality comes out, I hope nobody is extremely disappointed that there's going to be no decision made, because the process was flawed from the word go. Not unlike what? Oh, the kangaroo court of family law. Imagine that. So, when we go down through and we start talking about the science behind the nexus, the negative nexus, as I wrote it, that whole process, I laid it out for them, and I've gone over it on the show here. Kirk's gone over it on the show more times than, we'd probably bore you to death if we went, to the point, going over it again. So when we talk about how do you fix it? Well, yeah, again, standard joke. Republicans are going to miss every shot. Democrats are going to die anyway. What else is new? So let's go to the list of motions. We already know that it's fraud, section 16, page 25. So how do you get that sucker into the quorum? How do you enter into the quorum? Well, you enter by motion. Okay. What is the purpose of your motion? Well, if it's shit made up, you want it off your record. That's to expunge. That's 39. Or if you have something a little more complicated, I recommend using number 40 to consider petitions when no other provision is considered for consideration of petitions is made by rules. This one is actually a good catch-all for anybody who's never done this, because guess what? Even if there is no rule, they're going to say, oh, there's no rule, there's no rule, there's no rule. Open the book to page Roman numeral 37. Look at your list of motions. And I don't need a rule to enter this petition, right? Me as the citizen with all the political power, or person, or individual, or whatever word salad you want to put with it. It's entirely up to you. I just put on my subsidiary motion as one of the people. So we know that worked. Spoiler alert, hint to those who are wanting to do this. So that's why I always I'm going to recommend using a Mason's motion number 40, right? To to begin your process of walking in the door, calling SMU. And what does that look like? Well, again, just so we all know, for those who haven't been around, there it is right there. Well, when we know this is how we know fraud will invalidate acts, right? Where there is more than a mere technical violation of the rules of procedure. Oh, would that be like what's going on right now? The violation may invalidate the act, and an act will be invalidated where there is fraud or bad faith. So your dreams of impeachment, those were over before they started. Sorry about your luck, bad. Whoever wants Trump impeached, it ain't going to happen. It is what it is. This is what it means when you don't follow due process of law. So whether you're going to participate in a quorum, whether you're going to participate in a jury or a grand jury or whatever, the point is when you're going to assemble a group of people, there's a set of rules to do that. And the rules to do that are what we're teaching you guys here now. So when you are exposed to it, you won't be like, what the hell am I supposed to be doing? You'll already have it, sort of an idea of what that actually looks like. So I hope that kind of, brings into perspective a little bit of what's actually going on right here, right now with impeachment. So, and why it literally is tic-tac-toe. So, for lack of a better expression, we've established that jurisdiction. Let's talk about what that jurisdiction was, right? Kirk went over our rights as law. Okay. Well, we're removing these under the Civil Rights Removal Statute, the jurisdiction as laid out by this federal judge pursuant to these criteria. Okay. So we walked in with the answer to question number 1 in our hand. That's significant because that hasn't happened before, at least the way it was explained to me. So, yeah, again, reading means reading. Having covered pretty much all 10 of those principles of group decision making, including the first one, under direction of a court. So this is the reason that Congress knows that they don't have a choice. Okay. We already know what the president's doing with all of this. Read the executive orders on policy and guidance documents. That didn't happen by accident. That was by everything that every one of us, including you guys, have done. All I did was lay some groundwork for you. That's all I did. Cleared out a few trees and put down some gravel so you could start building the road, man. That's what I do. So now that we know what that is, that's the jurisdiction that was established by the federal judge. When I walked in and said, okay, here's the model, okay, the Republican character and form of my challenge pursuant to the emoluments of my office, okay, old Richard Cranium with the bright idea. I got an idea here, right? I've already done the meeting, okay, assembled. We've assembled the quorum. We're doing the preliminary impact assessments right now. We already know what the subject matter is. Read the friggin' order. There's the jurisdiction that is subject to the order, right? So, watching these guys trip over this stuff, it doesn't surprise me for 2 reasons. It's never been done in any of our lifetimes because the dumb shits that created this problem are all dead, right? So what are we supposed to do? Go dig them up and hang them again? I mean, is that a reasonable thing? Would that make anybody happy? Sure as hell wouldn't help me at all. And I don't think it would help you guys at all.
Would not just be a bag of bones?
Right. Hand him to the dog, let him go play with it, give him something to do. But, the point is, it's these are the conundrums that we're dealing with. And don't think that, we're not the only ones that see it. We know you guys see it. And the more we can do and, bring these things out, which is why I do these models, because, my kids are, they're getting to the age now, they're starting to study civics, and they're doing their current events. And, it's a, to watch this stuff, to see them living the history of, us cleaning up the mess of people that, created long before us, and to watch what the intent was of the act that was made that particular time, how it's being used today, right? The differences and all of that. So, what's the end result? The end result is repeal all of that shit, right? Well, this is where it starts to get ugly, because, what's the political argument? The favorite one is pre-existing conditions when you're talking about the healthcare crap. No, we're not going to ignore anybody with a pre-existing condition. That would defy logic, reason, and those principles, Republican in character and form. So there's no rationale. There's no reason. So there's no equity. Reason in law is the perfect equity. There's no rationale to make that argument. They only spew that out there to incite those domestic insurrections from the Declaration of Independence. So I hope this stuff is starting to, kind of fall into place for you guys a little bit. And, watch how how we do this. This is like watching Men in the Men Cave, playing, tactical battleship, pew, pew, pew. And,
Pew, 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 pew.
right. So, yeah. I'm trying to answer as many questions as, that I get in email as I can. Hey, can you cover this and explain that? And, of course, the kids are like, Dad, hey, I'm working on a book report or whatever, okay. Like, Dad's not going to help kids with the homework. Duh. So, yeah, there's more than just you guys, or, for the reasons that I do a lot of what I do. But this is, I think this is kind of cool to be able to, do, homework with my kids in front of all of you guys at the same time, and everybody benefits from it. So, so anyway, bro, what do you think, man? It's pushing midnight now down here in Florida.
Yep.
So I think we've burnt up
we'll
another
call
one.
it good. We're right at the 2-hour mark here, so there's another
Betcha.